Sergei Pavlovich is slated to fight Jairzinho Rosenstruik at the upcoming UFC Fight Night, and honestly, I don't know what the matchmakers were thinking on this one. Now, one of these fighters is going on 2 wins, the other's going on 2 losses. I understand why this fight was sort of made, but it still feels incredibly egregious to me. And as positive as I try to be in these videos, I also got to be frank, I think Sergei Pavlovich is going to completely run through Jairzinho Rosenstruik. And whilst I didn't like the fight when it was first announced, when watching the actual film, more and more I just thought that the only point of this fight is to get Sergei a win, and there's no real prospect of Jairzinho winning. In a way, it feels like Jairzinho is being punished because his last 2 fights, whilst being wins, haven't exactly been fan-friendly. I mean, after round 2, that Shamil Giziev fight really went downhill, and the Taito Ivasa fight is the complete opposite of what you think of when you think of heavyweights. But I think that's enough of an intro. It's time to actually get into the fight breakdown. First, we gotta understand what types of fighters we're dealing with here. Sergei Pavlovich, very boxing, heavy style, big brawler, not gonna take it to the ground, gonna keep it standing, has a shit ton of power in his hands. And then you have Jairzinho Rosenstruik. You're looking at a very orthodox kickboxer, gonna do all the things you expect, nothing really too unique about him. Also not going to take it to the ground. I think these guys have a combined 0 takedowns in their career. Although funny enough, if I had to give the edge in wrestling to someone, I'd probably give it to Sergei Pavlovich, just seeing how he sprawled out that takedown against Curtis Blades. Rocked or not, the entry was very clean. And I mean, when we're dealing with these heavyweights, honestly, that might be the best thing to go on. I would say the first real thing I noticed when looking at the film is that there's going to be a lot of chasing in this fight. Sergei, constant forward pressure, constantly going forward, and Jairzinho sort of resigns himself to fight on the back foot. And I do say resigns himself because, frankly, he's not good at it. And that's sort of the biggest problem. His style is so reliant on him fighting going backwards, and he's not very good at it at all. My biggest gripe with how Jairzinho fights is that he seems more reliant on his opponent shooting themselves in the foot right before the fight than actually going out there and proving something. Now, to be clear, there are good things about Jairzinho. Like, I think he's actually pretty accurate as a striker overall, and he holds a bit of power in his hands, so you would think that he could probably put those 2 things together and outstrike people. But the problem is that when he's constantly going backwards, doesn't want to be in the pocket at all, just constantly on the back foot, he negates his own power. He throws shots that land clean, but they got nothing behind them. And in that case, when you're dealing with heavyweights who are, to be frank, a lot of tough dudes, right? They deal with the hardest punches in the sport. They're willing to come through and fight through damage, and you're not even giving damage out. I mean, take a look at his last 2 opponents, Shamil and Taito Ivasa. Taito Ivasa was gun-shy in the first 2.5 rounds. He starts coming forward in the third, starts punishing him. And when Shamil started going forward from the start of the fight, he was piecing him up in the pocket. It was really just him gassing out that ended to his downfall. And at least in my humble, unprofessional opinion, I don't think you can attribute these things to Jairzinho as a fighter. I think these were definitely outside factors, like Shamil's conditioning, and just the streak that Tai was on at that point. Now, to be fair, you can say that Jairzinho is a good kickboxer, and Sergei just got destroyed by Volkov, taking a very kickboxing heavy approach. But I don't think that's repeatable for Jairzinho, because when you're dealing with someone like Sergei, who's a brawler and is very lengthy, the fact that Volkov was 6'7" is what really helped him that fight. He could take advantage of a very natural boost in height. Jairzinho doesn't have that. He's shorter in length than Sergei. I don't know about height, but I do know about reach. And what Volkov was able to do is he was almost able to use that stab kick as like a jab to hold Sergei off. But the problem with that is that you have to actually set on your shots. You have to plant your feet. And Jairzinho doesn't do that. You can look at the fight in which he got knocked out by Ngannou. He throws a leg kick running backwards. That's what he does. He strikes running backwards. He doesn't plant on his shots properly. Now, he might plant on his jab, but that's about it. And with the way that Sergei comes forward, I don't know if he'd want to risk getting into the pocket with Sergei. And to highlight that fight with Volkov for a second, yeah, it's not a great performance by Sergei, but he took a lot of damage in that fight, and he never really stopped coming forward. If you're not willing to give out damage to Sergei and knock him out, I don't really see how you're going to stop that forward pressure at any point. Which tells me that Sergei Pavlovich will have free rein to go forward without much interruption, and if Shamil Gaziev can cut you off against the cage, I have to wonder what Sergei can do, whilst also being the hardest hitter in the UFC right now. So with that being said, whilst I acknowledge I can be wrong about any of these fights, it is heavyweight, so anything can happen. I think that Sergei is going to steamroll Jairzinho, and I think it's probably going to end within the first round, if I'm being honest. But let me know what you think down below. If you did enjoy the video, please do give it a like, and if you want to see more of these, please do subscribe.